Hi, this is Dan Adams.
And I'm Brian Gongle.
And we're the WHO Radio Wise Guys, and this is our post-show video for
right. December 10th, 2011.
And we're back on the air now after football season. We're very excited to be back. We've got some stories here that we're going to talk about that we didn't have time to get to on the air today. First up, Brian.
Well, first of all, if you're on Twitter and you're a politician, it's probably for the best if you don't retweet something like this. I'm reading this off a different screen. Today it became obvious that if somebody writes the phrase "party of swindlers and thieves" on a blog, he is a stupid blanking sheep. That was a message that was retweeted by Russian President Medvedev on his Twitter account. It had been posted somewhere else on Twitter under a different account, and then it got retweeted or reposted by his account. In a classic case of somebody should have been watching what they were pressing on the computer keyboard a little more carefully than they did. It was subsequently erased from Medvedev's Twitter account, but it was up there long enough for people to capture screen captures of it and to post it to the internet that was what had been said. This is just one of those classic cases where politicians probably need to decide if they themselves are going to be in charge of their Twitter accounts or if somebody else is going to be. That's one of the reasons I love Chuck Grassley. He clearly is doing his own Twitter account.
I was just going to say they should take a lesson from Chuck Grassley. Yes, he obviously does his own Twittering.
Probably much to the chagrin of his staff. His staff probably hates the fact that he does it. Because, God love him, he does frequently text like a teenage girl.
Oh, exactly. I can't read half the stuff.
He really does.
Yeah, I can't read half the stuff he tweets.
But it is very personal. It's very clearly coming from him. I find this story kind of interesting because it just came out recently, earlier this year, that President Obama was not actually the person behind the Twitter handle Barack Obama. It was made clear that he had actually never used the account himself, and it had always been a staff member or an aide doing it before. It then became clear that he was now responsible for it. And supposedly from this point forward, anything that is signed with -BO, in fact, comes from the president when it comes through his Twitter account. I'll tell you what I think.
I don't want our president tweeting.
Well, no, I do. Honestly, I'll tell you what I really want. What I really want in this universe is for politicians to spend 10 minutes a day, just 10 minutes a day, writing out what they actually think about what's going on in the universe.
God.
I really do.
Are we sure we want this?
I really think we do, because here's the problem. Today we get these stories that, Medvedev's account on Twitter not really being done by the president of Russia. President Obama's Twitter account not really being done by the president. In fact, this has been going on for a long time. Politicians have used ghostwriters and speechwriters forever. I mean, it's probably pretty clear that President Kennedy didn't write most of the stuff for which he is best known as having said. The speechwriters did it for him.
Yes.
There's the legend that Winston Churchill, in fact, didn't deliver at least 3 of his biggest speeches. They were delivered by an actor. They were then broadcast out during World War II. Now,
on the radio. They didn't have TV back then.
On the radio, exactly. Now, the story, on one hand it goes, because he was too drunk to have delivered them. The fact of the matter probably is that he delivered those speeches to the House of Commons, to the Parliament there, and then didn't have time to deliver the speeches for the radio, so he let somebody else do it. But either way, there's a long history of politicians' words not actually coming from the politicians themselves. Now, in my opinion, being forced to write something out forces you to clarify your thought process, forces you to think through what you really mean and to share what you really believe in your own words. And it's pretty easy to separate the authentic words that are coming from the individual from the words that are not. People develop their speech patterns and their habits and their practices, and just their vocabulary makes it clear what's being said by the individual and what's not. I would love it if our politicians had to spend 5 or 10 minutes a day, just 5 or 10 minutes, not a long time, telling us what they really think is going on.
That would mean that they would have to be somewhat accountable and responsible for their own thoughts and beliefs.
Exactly.
And that's just not going to happen in Washington. So.
Well, it's what I would love to see. Anyway, I find it kind of interesting because, like that, we get a lot of spin. I would love to see an unvarnished opinion coming from these people once in a while. Like that, we get it from Senator Grassley. He might be one of the only people who actually does it in Washington. I would love to see it all the way down from Washington all the way down to the state level, even down to the local level. I would love to hear what people are actually thinking, and I don't think it's asked that much to ask them in today's day and age when you have the internet accessible to you. You can post a blog account or something on Twitter or anything for free. 5 or 10 minutes is all I'm asking for what you really think of the events.
I think you're asking for a lot, Brian Gongle.
Well, I'm not going to get it. I know it's a pipe dream. I just think it would be nice to get it. Go ahead.
Okay. You want to hit the thing there?
Go ahead.
All right.
Has a problem with our technology.
Speaking of being responsible and accountable, Microsoft, my favorite company in the world.
He says with a degree of sarcasm reserved for anything.
Yeah. Next year they're coming out with Windows 8.
Right.
Because Windows 7 hasn't been out long enough. It's only been out about a year now.
Like 15 minutes.
And they're not making any money off the service pack, so they got to come out with a new one.
Well, I do like Windows 7, by the way.
I think Windows 7 is a great. I'm actually running Windows 7 on a computer, and it works beautiful.
It's by far the most clean running Windows I've ever had.
It's
no question.
Way better than Windows Vista, and,
yeah.
and I even think it's better than XP. And I liked XP.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, XP was pretty decent.
No, this is a good operating system.
So next year, they're saying sometime in the early spring, Windows 8 will be shipping.
Right.
Okay. So Microsoft, in order to make this easier for the consumer, is get this. Promising a no-hassle Windows 8 upgrade path.
Oh boy! For how much?
Well, we don't know yet.
Oh, okay, that's
and they're not clearly defining what that means, no hassle. But what they're saying is they've done focus group research, and people have come back to them and said, "Yeah, we just think the upgrade path is a little restrictive, and that's why we haven't done it yet."
Oh, of course.
So Microsoft is saying, "Okay, we're going to make this easier for our users to upgrade, and we're promising an easier upgrade path, a no-hassle upgrade path for Windows 8.
Mm-hmm.
I say it's not going to work.
Well, good luck.
Good luck with that, Microsoft.
Good luck with all that.
Yeah. So,
anyway,
moving on.
Moving right along. If this is something we've said to you repeatedly on the WHO Radio Wise Guys, and we'll say it yet again. If you post it anywhere on the internet, assume that it could be found by people who are intent on looking for it and discovering it.
Like us.
We're not really in the business of trying.
Yeah, we don't really care.
However, the fact that some photos that Mark Zuckerberg had on his own Facebook page had gotten hacked and were then released to the internet is proof positive once again. And what happened was some people discovered a security vulnerability within Facebook that allowed someone to temporarily get in to pictures even though they had been marked private without actually having to get the private security credentials to see them. The fact of the matter is that anything you post on the internet could be found with enough effort. Doesn't matter if it's behind a security wall somewhere. It doesn't matter if it's something that you've marked as just for your friends or whatever else. So the bottom line to this is, go ahead and post pictures on Facebook. Go ahead and make comments on Twitter. Go ahead and share what you think on Google+. But whatever you do, assume that anything you put out there could be found by others.
You should just make the assumption that it's going to be found.
Right. Not that you want it to be, and not that you should live in perpetual fear of this, but if you get the idea, get the feeling that you really don't need other people to see this, if it's a picture from your Las Vegas vacation, and it might involve, let's say, a little too much skin, or say you doing a little prison time, you might choose not to post it at all on Facebook. Just don't put it on the internet at all.
Don't put it on the internet.
Yeah. Even if it looks secure, don't put it on the internet.
Yes.
That's our bottom line rule.
All right, moving on. Macintosh computers, Apple's Macintosh computers have hit a worldwide market share of 5.2%.
Ooh, break out the champagne.
Now, hold on. You might be thinking, yeah, whoopee, so what?
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
There's a couple things you got to keep in mind here. First of all, back in the early 90s, Apple Macintosh computers had a worldwide market share of around 60%. Okay? Worldwide.
I never looked at those figures, so I couldn't.
Well, I was in the business back then. I remember this. Apple dominated everywhere, across the board. And nationally, it was even higher than that. Okay? And then we all know the story about what happened to Apple way back when. They had big falling out between Steve Jobs and John Sculley, and Apple did a lot of really stupid things, and their market share just plummeted. It just tanked down to the point where it got down to about 2.5%, even less than that. Worldwide, PCs, got cheaper, and Apple stuck to
the high-level pricing model.
Yeah, which, by the way, is working for them nowadays.
No, they're bringing in cash.
When I was in the computer business a long time back, I had the owner of my company telling me, you need to get away from Apple because they're going to be dried up and blown away before too long. And actually,
at the time it looked like it.
Well, since Steve Jobs died, all this information came out about how Microsoft bailed them out. They were actually 90 days away from being broke.
Really?
The company being broke, having nothing.
I didn't. I'm learning this just now too.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Gates, he pumped $150 million into the company, which basically saved him.
Wow.
So Apple is where they are today because, honestly, Microsoft saved their butt years ago. So my point is that, their market share got down to about nothing worldwide not that many years ago, probably about, 12, 15 years ago, if even that. And they've obviously done really well since then and come back. But this is market share for just their Macintosh computers. We're not talking iPhones, iPads, iPods, none of that stuff. Just the Macintosh computer, which, by the way, if you have an iPhone or an iPad or an iPod or anything like that, the absolute best accessory that you can get for it is a Macintosh computer. I'm telling you this right now.
Says the guy
Okay.
who was getting on my case because I said a $50 hard drive wasn't a big expense.
So anyway, worldwide, I mean, a lot of people have been doing this. They've been buying Macintosh computers over the last few years because they like the products that Apple's coming out with. And so worldwide now, their market share has come up to 5.2%, which is really impressive. And nationally, about a year ago, I read an article where nationally that was up to around between 9 and 10%. Keep in mind, they were down to nothing. They were less than 90 days from being out of business. So this is really impressive. This is really good. And to all the naysayers, guys that I used to work with at this computer company many years ago that told me that I was an idiot for sticking by the Mac platform, screw you. See where Apple is now, buddy.
Speaking of market share.
Sorry, I had to get that off my chest.
He clearly did. I'm glad we had our Dr. Phil moment here on the air. Speaking of market share, it appears that Google Chrome may actually now have exceeded or surpassed Firefox as the second most popular internet browser available today.
Okay.
It is on the rise, and both of them now have roughly, very round numbers here, roughly speaking, 25% of the internet browser market share, and Internet Explorer for Microsoft still has about 50%. All three are free. Part of the problem, though, that is being faced now by Firefox, which for the longest time was the alternative to Internet Explorer, is that it has long been subsidized by Google, which is now making Chrome.
Yeah.
Which has now moved into that second place spot, or at least appears to be in the path, or quite close to taking over that second place spot now. Chrome has been on the uptick. Firefox has been holding steady. Internet Explorer has been declining. But see, if Firefox only continues to hold steady and Google continues to rise, that Chrome browser continues to rise, it'll take over.
It's like it reminds me of this old saying in business where if you're not growing, you're dying.
And see, I've always disagreed with that. Always differed with that philosophy. I think there are plenty of businesses that can do fine for the long term by building a good product and simply being stable. But that being said, this is interesting news, perhaps threatening news for Firefox. We'll see, because, again, a large portion of their funding has come from Google because the Firefox browser has a little window in the upper right-hand corner for search. It defaults by going to the Google search engine. And so Firefox has been getting funding from Google to drive people to their search engine for the longest time. If that funding dries up because Google decides, you know what, we don't want this competitor in Firefox, we'd rather just have everybody move over to Chrome, and they cut off that funding, that represents a huge share of what keeps Firefox afloat. The Mozilla Foundation actually is the firm that owns it. That's what it is.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think the thing to take away from the story is that Internet Explorer support is declining, and that's a good thing.
Well, in general, I love the fact that we have three very strong competitors in the browser market. They have forced one another to come up with better security standards.
Safari
is negligible, certainly on the Windows side of things.
Actually, you know, I fixed a friend of mine's laptop a couple weeks ago. It had Safari on it for the Windows, and I took it off.
I've tried using Windows
it's not
Safari.
Good.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's not good.
But that being said, then you also have Opera, which has never been able to get a very large share of the browser space. But the fact that there are at least those three major competitors, each with a significant chunk of the browser market, again, in Internet Explorer, Firefox, and Chrome, that's a good thing because it improves the overall level of security, it improves the number of features, and it keeps them all tied to a common set of web browsing standards, which is very, very good. Remember back in the day, 10 years ago, you'd go to websites and it would say, this site has been optimized for use on Internet Explorer version 2 at 800 by 600 dB. Oh, it was terrible.
And some of those websites are still out there. They haven't been updated since.
That's true. We are far better off living in the era now where sites are built to common standards so that it isn't designed for Internet Explorer or designed for Firefox. It's just designed to be a page on the Internet that everybody can see.
Yeah.
We're far better off this way.
So, all right, moving on. Our next story. You know what a QR code is, Brian?
Yeah, it's that funny-looking pixelated code.
I'll show you a little picture of this right here. This is a QR code. See that? It's those pixelated-looking things that you see every now and then.
Some of them very complicated. That is one of the most elaborate QR codes I've ever
it's a bizarre one.
Wow.
QR codes or quick response codes are things that you see on product packaging and other places now where you take your smartphone, your camera, and you have to have an application to scan that code, and that code is designed to direct you to a website or to do something. The common one on the Android platform is called Goggles, Google Goggles, as we call it.
Exactly. It brings up, and it looks just like a camera on your screen.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It uses your camera to try to look something up.
Yeah, and then it scans that code and then does whatever action that code wants it to do. Usually it takes you to a website and shows you information about a specific product. Anyway, this is supposed to be the latest, greatest thing, since barcoding, and it's not catching on. And worse than it not catching on is that a recent survey of 500 college students, these are college students now.
One would think the tech-savvy ones.
Yeah, people that are immersed in technology. 80% of the ones that have smartphones, or 80% of college students now have smartphones, and 20% of those people don't know how to do a QR code.
20% don't know, or only 20% did know?
Don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if only 20% did know.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Only 20% were able to successfully scan the example.
There we go.
Okay, so yeah.
Only 20% did know.
Only 20% did know. So, you know what? Here's what's funny about it. My 15-year-old son knows what a QR code is and can scan it with his phone.
I'm curious if I can scan the one that's on that page that you have right
there. Oh,
there.
don't try it. It's a bad print-off.
Well, I understand, but I'm just curious if it does catch it. Because the whole idea about these QR codes is that you don't have to remember where to go on the Internet if you want to look up something. You can simply use that code and take a quick snapshot of it, and it will take you to wherever you are destined to go. It did not recognize that one.
Well, this is a bad print-off.
That's fine. But for what it's worth, the whole idea is that with these QR codes, you don't have to remember a large URL. You don't have to remember to go to whoradiowiseguys.com. Yeah. You just see that QR code and you take a picture of it, essentially, and then you funnel it through, and it takes you straight to the site. Is it worthwhile? Maybe. I mean, I sure wouldn't invest my business plan in it, that's for sure.
So here's the other stat that we need to take away from this article. About 75% of the people surveyed said that they were unlikely to scan a QR code in the future. So the people that are immersed in technology the most, college students, don't even like these things.
Well, one of the problems that I find is that people keep putting them in the wrong places. There's one if you go to Jordan Creek Town Center over in the food court. There's one on a banner actually promoting UNI, our common alma mater. It is promoting UNI, and it's got a QR code on it, but unfortunately you can't hold the phone in such a way as to zoom in on the QR code to properly take a picture of it and go to whatever link they're trying to take you to.
Oh, my.
It's frustrating.
That's very frustrating. So
much abused. Anyway, highly promoted.
That's all I got.
You know, there's plenty of other technology news for you, but at this stage, I think we've exhausted your patience. So visit us online at whoradiowiseguys.com, where we'll have other stories throughout the week. And of course, you can visit my site anytime at gongle.com, GONGOL.com.
And hey, thanks for listening to us. I'm Dan Adams.
And I'm Brian Gongle.
And we are the WHO Radio Wise Guys. This is our post-show video for December 10th today, 2011. And we're back on the air now. We're going to be preempted a few weeks here coming up in January for basketball. But for the most part, we're back now. So check in with us. Check out our Facebook page, which is
www.facebook.com/WHO Radio Wise Guys.
And tell your friends about us. That's the other thing. Tell your friends about the WHO Radio Wise Guys. We love to hear from you, so feel free to send us your questions, and we'll do our best to get back to you.
All right, thanks very much, and visit us online again at whoradio.com.